Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Risa Groux. How are you today, Risa?
I'm so good, Desiree. How are you doing?
I am excellent, and I am honored to have you on the show with us today. Risa, you are just a powerhouse. I'm so excited for this conversation. You are a functional clinical nutritionist, trained functional nutritionist, and you are the creative force behind a fantastic course that is achieving optimal thyroid health. And we're going to dive into all of this. And really what we're going to be talking about is your journey in discovering that you had autoimmune disease, and that was Hashimoto's, and kind of how you discovered that you could correct this for yourself and then began sharing it with others so that they could enjoy better health in their lives. And so again, it's just an honor to have you on. You've been featured on radio and television, and we were just talking before we started. Good Morning America. Wow. And Good Day LA. You were on Hallmark's Home and Family. And so it's just such an honor to have you on to share your knowledge with us today. So let's dive in, Risa, and have you share with us how this journey began for you. Kind of where did you begin and how did you get to here where you are now?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really great to be here. And my story is started when I was a little girl, and every woman in my life was on a diet. They were always trying to lose the 5 or 10 pounds that they would, have this real struggle with, because they would go into deprivation on these starvation diets or these deprivation diets, and then they would, enjoy and have the gate was open, and we would have this all or nothing thing. And my grandma did it, my mom did it, and nobody had a lot of weight to lose, but it was just this perpetual thing that was, bad relationship with food. And so, of course, I adopted that, and I had a lot of confusion because they would say, oh, these foods are bad, and I would say, oh, that tastes pretty good to me. And I was just all this labeling of food, and my relationship with food became so bad. It was just like theirs. And I was determined that I was not going to do that. So I was just perpetually always trying to lose 3 pounds and, did that whole thing. Then I started reading and I started doing my own research. But I was always interested in food, always. I was just so interested in what the psychology behind it and the traditions of it and the cultures of food. And food means so much more than it actually is. That's fuel, right? But, we celebrate with it, we punish with it, we reward with it. I mean, we just do all these kinds of crazy things with food. We don't do this with brushing our teeth, right? I started having kids. And when I first got married, I conceived my first daughter, absolutely no problem. We basically looked at each other, got pregnant, no problems, right? And then when we were trying to conceive the second one, I was having a lot of trouble, and I just couldn't either hold a pregnancy. I couldn't get pregnant. It was really strange. So I eventually went to a fertility specialist, and the doctor did a bunch of labs. And this is so many years ago, I hardly knew much about it. And he looked at my labs and they said, you have an underachieving thyroid. And he passed over a script for me. And I said, well, what's this for? And he said, oh, you just take it every day. And I go, for how long? And he goes, oh, every day. And I'm like, every day? I'm like, for how long? And he goes, for the rest of your life. And that's when I walked out of that office and I went, first of all, why do I have an underachieving thyroid? Why is my thyroid not producing the hormones that it's supposed to produce? That's what its main job and function is, to produce thyroid hormones. Why am I not producing it? And why is the doctor not asking why? Because to me, that's crazy. Shouldn't we be fixing this instead of giving me a synthetic to kind of mask for this? And so that's really where my journey started. And then eventually I realized that I had this gene mutation that's very common. Most people have it. I test everybody for it, called MTHFR. And one of the side effects of MTHFR, it's a gene mutation that basically means you're not methylizing either your B12 and or your folate. And so once I started taking a B vitamin that was in cobalamin form, it was methylized form that my body can absorb it, I got pregnant. I had a great pregnancy, easy, everything was great. And shortly thereafter, so one of the symptoms of MTHFR is infertility, miscarriages, but nobody mentioned that to me until I did the research. And then a few months after that, I went to the doctor, the naturopath, and she tested me for Hashimoto's and antibodies attacking my thyroid. And I was like, what's going on? Why is my thyroid so out of control? And, basically I got the same thing here, take this medication. I was like, no, 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 no. Like, I am going to figure this out. And I tried to find the root causes and there was nothing. I could not find the root cause. So I started compiling my own list, and it took me years, probably 10 years. And I created a list of root causes for autoimmune disease. I put it in my book, Food Frame, because I feel like we should all know. And everybody, the rates of autoimmunity is increasing, unfortunately. It affects a lot of women, but men too. And we should know what is causing this. And when I was growing up, I didn't even know what autoimmune disease was. And I look back and I think both my grandmothers, I'm pretty sure, had Hashimoto's. I know that my dad and his identical twin brother had antibodies, but they've never been diagnosed. And it was a third of it is genetics. So I knew I had this high probability of getting it. Fortunately, my kids have not gotten it because I have done so much prevention and all this work that I did in those 10 years. I was able to reverse my Hashimoto's and keep any other autoimmune at bay.
Oh, wow. Risa, thank you for sharing that with us. And there's so much in there that you said that I want to touch on. First of all, being an advocate for yourself and just not accepting that you're going to have to take this medicine for the rest of your life, and not diving deeper into what does that mean. And you're like, no, 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 no. I want to know why. And, kind of standing up for yourself in that way. And that's so important for us to remember because unfortunately, Western medicine, it's like, here's the thing that you take and it's going to make it all better. But really, it's not making it better. It's a mask, right? It's just covering the symptoms of what's happening. It's not getting to the root cause of the issue. And so, thank you for reminding us that we need to be the ones who say, that's not acceptable. I want to know more. So, first of all, thank you for that. And, it's interesting. I had no idea that this was hereditary. And so thank you for sharing that information with us. So how there's testing, I'm sure, that's involved. You were talking about, testing and really compiling a list of, was it what you were eating and the results that you were having? And explain that to us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I went down, as I said, I compiled a list of every potential root cause, and I pretty much had every single one of those things, right? So I had been eating tuna sandwiches my entire childhood. In college, I switched it to a tuna salad. And then in the 80s, we had ahi came on the market. I was like having tuna by day and ahi by night. So I was filled with mercury, right? And I had got I had a couple fillings and they had mercury. So I had those removed. But mercury, high toxicity of heavy metals is one root cause. As I mentioned, I have that MTHFR, right? So that's a gene mutation that can start an autoimmune disease. I had a third of the genetics, right? Low vitamin D, really low vitamin D for a long time can also spark an autoimmune disease, which of course many labs I see from doctors don't even test for vitamin D. And it's so important. It's incredibly critical, right? We can't make bone without it. It's actually not a vitamin, it's a hormone. But we have a vitamin D receptor in every single cell in the body. And so it's thyroid and heart and gut and brain, and we will not make bone without it. I don't care how much calcium you eat or you take, you won't make bone, right? It's anti-aging, anti-cancer, readily important for immunity, right? So vitamin D, low vitamin D was another factor. Viruses, there are several viruses that can spark autoimmune disease, like Epstein-Barr virus. Epstein-Barr virus, most of us have, because if you had mono or you've swapped spit with somebody who's had mono, you have it in your system, right? And just like all other viruses, they lay dormant until something can activate them. So it's high stress. It could be a bad diet, not enough sleep, too much alcohol, too much sugar, a very stressful event. All those things can create a dormant virus to get activated. And sure enough, I had Epstein-Barr, very high numbers. So I treated that. And then the heavy metals took me a long time to treat that. I chelated for a long time. And parasites or infections, those are other things that can spark autoimmune disease as well. So there's so many things that can take place to set that in motion that I went down that road, and I had changed my diet. I was a vegan for a while, and then I stopped eating fish for a long time because of the mercury. So, and then I was eating this diet that was just, I didn't eat any sugar or any pasta, things like that. Occasionally I would have a brown rice pasta, but like maybe once every 6 months. But basically I was living off of beans. And I had quinoa, a lot of quinoa. And so these beans, which have a lot of lectins, and I can go down the road with lectins, but that causes a lot of inflammation. And it also has a lot of carbohydrates in it. And I was surviving on hummus and black beans and garbanzo beans and lentils and all really good, high in fiber, great plant source protein. But it was causing my blood sugars to go up. So I was super frustrated. And I saw on my labs that my cholesterol was crazy high. It was in the 300s. And then I did a Boston Heart Lab, and it showed that my risk of cardiovascular disease was really high. And I'm like, are you kidding? I don't eat sugar. I exercise. What is going on? So I spent almost every night of, for 10 years, Googling doctors who knew more than I did. I found this doctor and we did all this testing, and I changed my diet to paleo. I did everything. I was about 99% compliant for 3 months. I went back in after 3 months and my labs moved just a hair. And I just cried. I cried all the way home. And that's when I ordered the new stool test. And when I ordered that stool test, I saw that there were a lot of things off on there. There's 84 pathogens. And I knew that cardiovascular health and dental health is connected. So I found a great biological dentist in LA, and I took my stool test to her, and she took one look and she goes, "Oh, yep, that's salivary bacteria." She put me under in the ultrasound, and sure enough, they found it right then and there. 23 years prior, I had my wisdom teeth pulled, and there was a root left in my jaw, and it had grown an abscess around it. I felt absolutely nothing, no pain ever. You couldn't see it, you couldn't feel it. I mean, it was absolutely invisible. And then once she went in there, she saw that they left a piece of metal in there as well. So that had been in there for 23 years. So when I had the jaw surgery and I had this removed, next thing you knew, my numbers moved. And my blood sugars, which were almost to pre-diabetic levels, they completely got normal, and my thyroid became optimal, and everything basically healed.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Risa, thank you for sharing that with us, because who knew, right? Many of us don't know that so much of what happens in our mouth affects the rest of our body. And I have been fortunate enough to have another guest on this show who specializes in dental health, as a hygienist. And so we delved into some of this, but again, just to hear you reiterate what was happening, totally unbeknownst to you, was causing this result in your body. And you never would have known unless you continued to dig into what was happening with your body. And so again, it's just, you've got to be in charge of your own health, right? You've got to be your own advocate and just say, I need to know, and I'm going to do everything I can to figure out what is happening to me.
Right. And I always say to people, if you feel that something's off, because even if your labs don't say it, but usually people come to me because they've been through every doctor. The average person sees 6 doctors before they get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So I help people find it, because if you can't lose weight, basically what I say is, if there's a fire in the basement, you've got somebody on the second floor going, "Hey, Desiree, can you help me change the light bulb?" And you're like, "What? I've got the fire department going, and I'm trying to get this fire out," right? When we're in an inflamed state, if something is not balanced, if your body's not balanced, you're not in homeostasis, basically you are going to hold on to all your resources, right? You're not going to lose weight because it's trying to survive. It's trying to put the fire out. And that's what autoimmunity is, right? You've got this rampant immune system, and you're attacking your glands or tissues or your organs, and you've got a fire in the basement. You need to get something, fire hose, right? The doctor gives you a little squirt gun and says, "Let's manage this." Right? But it's not managing it. We have to put the fire out, right?
I love that analogy because it puts it in a way that we can all completely understand. These things are just like a tiny Band-Aid for the issue, like the little squirt gun, like you just described. It's no, this is not going to solve the problem. We've got a huge raging fire. Let's get at this with a real tool, that's going to help us. So thank you for sharing that. And so just kind of to reverse, you were talking about how you completely changed your diet in a couple of ways. And so let's dive into that and talk about how changing what we're eating begins to change what happens in our body.
So I have a philosophy called Food Frame, which is the title of my book, because when I first started my practice, several decades ago, I put everybody basically on the exact same eating plan. And I noticed that a huge chunk of people were just thriving, but there was another portion of people that weren't. We weren't able to move the needle. And I'm like, what's wrong? Why is this not working? So I realized after time that we should all be eating according to our current health status. Meaning, if you have blood sugar dysregulation, probably doing a paleo or keto, if keto would be right for you, there's a lot of qualifications there, but that is going to definitely to help bring down your blood sugars, right? If you've got IBS or you've got SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, so chronic bloating, maybe some diarrhea or constipation or alternating of both, the way to eat there is low FODMAP. And that's about a 30 to 90 day protocol. And then I've got suggestions to do after that. If you're in an autoimmune state and you come to me and you've got a raging fire and your antibodies are through the roof, I'm going to put you on the AIP protocol, right? That's the autoimmune protocol. So, we all have read that book that comes out and everybody in the office is on it. All your friends, your family, everybody, I lost 32 pounds. I lost 12. And you lose nothing. Well, that's because it's not the right fit for you, right? You still have the raging fire in the basement. You're going to hold on to your resources. So everybody is different. And while there's really good books and great philosophies behind them, it's not a one size fits all. It just isn't. So everybody should be eating according to your current health status. Once you no longer have diabetes or prediabetes or optimal ranges, then you can change your eating program, right? So, it doesn't change that rapidly, but you should be eating according to your health status.
Good point. That's important to remember. What is your sort of managing what is happening with you right now to get whatever the numbers are in line back to a level that's, normal. And, then you can make some small adjustments but not to go to the extreme in the other direction. And then you're back at square one. Good stuff. You've mentioned your book. And so let's dive into that. It's Food Frame. Diet is a 4-letter word. And I love this title because, in Western culture, we have this diet culture, right? Where we're all trying to lose weight. You mentioned before about your mom, your grandmothers, yourself, all of us are fluctuating 5, 10, 20 pounds. We're trying to get back down. We go back up. So talk to us about your book and tell us more about it.
So it's really about my methodology of Food Frame. So what I do is I talk about detoxing because detoxing is just imperatively important, especially in today's toxic world where we're having more chemicals. Literally every year we're approved 2,000 to 6,000, regardless of who's in the White House. It's very unfortunate. We have 86,000 chemicals approved by the FDA for us to use, to eat, to put on our skin. It's crazy, way more than any other country on the planet. So detoxing is really important. And so I do that with pretty much everybody I work with for the first 2 weeks. I talk about detoxing and why. And then I go through the top 6 eating lifestyles or food frames that I find I use the most with people when they walk into my office. And I do a very individual planning for people because not everybody's the same. And again, our gut situation changes. And really what I'm focusing on are the 2 foundational issues that either optimize our health or hinder our health. And one is systemic inflammation. We know that's the driver of disease, right? And the other is gut health. We talked about that a little bit, but gut health is incredibly important. All of those are ways of eating to decrease that systemic inflammation and increase good gut health. And so there's AIP, as I mentioned, the autoimmune protocol. There's low lectin, which is taking out those lectins, those anti-nutrients that cause inflammation. Low FODMAP, I mentioned AIP, paleo, keto, and vegetarian. And so those basically are the ones that I go to the most. I don't really go to vegetarian, but a lot of people have morals or cultures that surround themselves with vegetarian. So I work with that. And I really break down what to eat, what not to eat, who's best suited for each, and who's not suited for each. And so it's really helpful. There's a bunch of easy recipes in there as well. But I really break down all of that. I talk a little bit about thyroid, MTHFR, all these things that I think are really, really helpful for people. And people can take a food frame quiz on my website at Risa Groux Nutrition to find out. It's 12 questions. You find out which is best food frame for you.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I'll for sure link that in the show notes, your website, and so they can easily find this questionnaire, which is tremendous. Thank you. And important for us to know, right? It really is important for us to know what's a good way for us to be eating that's suitable for our body and what we're experiencing. So good stuff. Can you share with us maybe some challenges that you see with people that you work with and patients that really they have with adjusting their diet and adjusting their eating?
Wine.
Ugh.
People love their wine. And, it actually is a bit of a challenge because, they're using it as a coping and a relaxation method, but it really doesn't end up helping. It really disturbs our sleep. It messes up our blood sugar. It congests our liver, and it creates a lot of sulfites and sulfates in that wine that just, have a lot of toxins. So wine is a really big challenge for people. But other than that, and sugar's a tough one, but really people conquer sugar all the time because when you go on the detox and you're cleaning yourself out and you're eating protein, fat, and fiber, you're not really craving that anymore. It's really amazing how it happens. Wine is a little different. Coffee is a little bit of an issue too, but coffee has a lot of great benefits to it. I'm okay with coffee if it's a reasonable amount, if it's clean, if it's organic, because again, coffee is very heavily sprayed. So you're getting a lot of toxins that way. And it's what you put in your coffee, right? The amount of sugar and chemicals people put in their coffee is astounding to me. I don't think they realize it until we kind of, break that down. But wine is really probably the biggest one. Most people come to me when they're really motivated. They've tried everything and they really just want to make changes and feel better. Once we get on the program in the first few days, it's really by the first week, they're like, oh, I feel so much better. My energy's better. My skin's better. I feel less puffy, all these things. They wouldn't trade that again. Yeah, most people are pretty compliant.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. The wine, I could see that being a big issue for some people because we do use it as an opportunity to just sit and relax and reflect and enjoy our evening or whatever. But we can do all of those things without the wine, but it becomes kind of part and parcel of our thought around relaxing,
And
right?
everybody does it, like I have a girlfriend who I've told her so many times throughout the years, I don't drink wine. And she'll always say, come over for a glass of wine, and it's her way of saying, come over, let's connect. And, even if I have water or something, she's good. But, it's a way to come for a glass of wine, it's a lovely gesture of connection. And again, like you said, downloading your day and relaxing and stuff. So there is a lot of positive benefits to that connection time and that slowing down time, but it's a little tough on the body.
And as you pointed out, there's so many other parts to the wine itself that it becomes the issue that really makes it not ideal as part of the solution. And there's certainly lots of other options that, you can be drinking instead and still, feel relaxed and connected to other people. It doesn't have to be wine. But what you shared in there also about when you begin to change some of the things that you're eating, your body naturally, the sugar attachment, addiction begins to subside because of what else you're feeding your body. And it just goes, I don't need that anymore. I don't want that anymore. So share a little bit more about that because that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it's really amazing to me because I watch people heal every day, which is the coolest thing ever. But it's really amazing. I use this analogy that if your car takes gas, you've been putting shampoo in your gas tank. I don't know, I've never tried it, so I don't know if it would register as full, but I can tell you that the car would probably not work well. And my guess is it would probably say, okay, that was great, but I need gas because I'm fueled by gas. And if you think of it that's simple, we're fueled by protein, fat, and fiber. And when we add all these other things, like pastries or cookies and ice cream, and let's not go down the road of Oreos. I was just in the market yesterday and I saw Oreo dipping or dipper. I'm like, how many Oreos can we have? And so this is a processed food that has really no nutritional value. So you're eating that and you might get an initial, buzz or something. This feels good or it tastes good, but it really doesn't feed you. It's empty. It's not nutrient dense. So your body's going, okay, now what? Like, where's my protein, fat, and fiber? So our body, we consume more calories when we are eating non-nutrient dense foods. But if you're eating real food, and I'm talking about food without nutritional panels, right? Things that are plucked from the ground or sprouting from the earth and, crawling on the earth, right? So those are foods that we're born to eat, right? Our body knows what to do with those foods. And then our body doesn't need actually as much food. We don't crave sugars. We don't have that endless hunger because we're actually filling up our gas tank with the fuel that it needs. And then, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point, Risa. I love that concept of you're giving your car the gas it needs. You're giving your body the fuel it needs. And any of the other stuff, it's just, I don't know what to do with this. Why are you giving me this? This doesn't help me at all. I love this.
And I categorize food with food for survival and food for sport. So a lot of people come into my office eating food for sport. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. What sounds good? What do I feel like? What am I in the mood for? And we don't think about, did I have enough protein, fat, and fiber at breakfast or lunch? And so what do I need to fill up on dinner, right? How can I balance this? Do I have a rainbow of colors and things like that? Not a lot of people think of that. And you don't have to necessarily. But if you're eating real food, you don't have to, right? People eating for sport is not something that I want to take away from everybody forever because we all want to eat for sport occasionally, right? And we travel, and part of our experience for traveling is food. And, it's our birthday and we want our favorite, whatever it is, right? Or it's Tuesday and I just feel like chips and guac, right? We're entitled to do that because we don't want to be in this deprivation thing, but we have to really eat more for survival and less for sport. Most people come in eating more for sport and less for survival. When we think about it that way, then we realize, yeah, I'm totally eating for sport, right?
Yeah, for sure. What a great way to think about it. And I had never heard of it referred in that way, eating for sport. But most of us do ask ourselves that, what do I feel like eating today? What do I feel like drinking right now? And instead of, what does my body need to be eating? It's what do I feel like eating? And that could change on any day basis based on whatever has happened in your day, right? And so if you've had a rough day, you're thinking, well, I feel like eating crap because, I've had a terrible day and this is going to make me feel better, when most often it's not. And you're just, doing a disservice to your body. But wow, interesting point. Eating for sport. I love that. Thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
concept with us. So can you share maybe some other stories of successes that some of your clients and patients have seen when they begin to make some of these changes?
Gosh, I've seen so many. I worked with a family. I worked with a woman first and found that she had a lot of issues, Hashimoto's and blood sugar dysregulation, and she had a chronic cough. And she was married to a doctor, a surgeon, and she'd gone to his hospital and nobody could figure it out. And they were giving her meds, and this cough never went away. Anyway, I worked with her for a while. She ended up losing 72 pounds with me, and the cough went away pretty close to immediately. But she felt amazing. Like, she was not fatigued, she wasn't napping, all that stuff. And then I got a call from her one day saying, "You're not going to believe this, but my husband wants to come see you." And I was like, "Oh, awesome. This is great. He's a surgeon. I love working with doctors. They're my favorite." And so he comes in, he was a little reluctant. He's, "Okay, I'm going to give this a shot." And so we did his blood work. I went through everything with him, and we took care of all of his stuff, and we did a stool test and his blood work that I do with everybody. And then at the end of my 12 session package that I had worked with him, he said, "I have to tell you something." And I said, "Sure, what is it?" And he said, "I never mentioned this to you, but a year and a half ago, I got hearing aids because my hearing was so bad." And he said, "I went into the audiologist at the hospital last week and get it checked. And the audiologist said, 'I don't know what you've been doing, but you don't have a hearing issue anymore.'" And I was like, oh my God. I thought I pretty much knew what this was attributed to, but I just sat back and I said, "What do you think that is from?" And he said from the systemic inflammation. And for sure, it was definitely the systemic inflammation. And then shortly thereafter, they brought both their girls in who were totally fatigued. They were high school girls, really major fatigue. They thought it was because they were working so hard academically, and they were just, they were on antidepressants, young girls. And it turned out they had both two raging active Epstein-Barr viruses. So they came in after we treated them and they said, thank you so much for bringing our daughters back, and they're back alive. And so that was a really cool, I love that story because it was the whole family was affected and they eat so differently. Now the doctor is growing all these vegetables in his yard and he's just totally changed the way he practices medicine. And I just love that. But I've seen people with autoimmune disease. I work with a lot of rheumatoid arthritis patients who really we are able to get rid of just about all of their pain, which is super awesome. And I've worked with Freddie Couples, the golfer, the PGA golfer. He's one of the greatest golfers of all time. And he had chronic back pain and he came and he wanted to lose 20 pounds before the Masters. I said, let's talk about your pain. So he had all this chronic inflammation, it turned out. And because he lives on golf courses and he works on golf courses, so he's breathing in all these chemicals day in and day out. So we were able to, with all the doctors he goes to all over the world, and he traveled with his physical therapist. He now, after we worked together, he was out of complete back pain, like altogether. He's like, wow, this has never happened for me before. So I could go on and on with stories. It's just fun to watch because all you do is decrease the systemic inflammation, increase the good gut health, and find out where the other fires are. And then, you're all back together again.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Risa, thank you for sharing those stories with us. That just sounds amazing. I love the story of the family for sure. And that the doctor discovered that he wasn't just losing his hearing, it was inflammation causing the hearing loss. And it's like, how would you even know that? Just fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And, it's very easy to try to find a quick solution. We all want to be better quickly. And it's very easy to be taking medications and medicines and whatever. And yes, it serves its purpose. I'm not saying if you absolutely need to take it, you shouldn't take it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm
Right.
obviously not a doctor. I'm not qualified to do that. But what I am saying is if you can make changes to the fuel that you are giving to your body that can ultimately create better health, it's ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say try it naturally, and then you can always fall back on medication. But there are some cases where medication is necessary. So absolutely, it's an individual case. But I don't think that the person who comes into my office on 8 or 10 medications, those people, they should be the picture of health, right? If medication is what makes us healthy, but they feel terrible. And then they have all these side effects from all the medication, and then there's just all these holes popping up in the boat when, and then you're at that point, you're just chasing the holes because you don't even know which is the first hole that started, but now we're just chasing all the different holes in the boat.
Yeah, it's plug it. Which one am I plugging first? Now this one's burst again, and you got to plug that one even harder. Yeah, I mean, another fantastic analogy. It just really makes it so easy for us to understand what is happening here.
Mhm.
You're just trying to put this fire out, put that fire out, and it's not really getting to the underlying cause of any of this.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what are some top tips that you can share with the listeners that they can begin? I know this is a very individual thing and that everybody is going to have, different things that they need to be addressing, but what are some tips that in general anybody can begin to implement into their life that you want to suggest?
Yeah, the first thing is totally in your control is take out the toxins in your home.
Mhm.
The laundry detergent, all the fragrance candles, the Febreze, all those things, all the fragrances are just poison. And all of those things, just get all those out of your house. Your beauty supplies. Look, I just threw out all my makeup a few years ago because I realized there was all this crap in it and it was a better for you, healthier brand. So now I am very critical of what I use and what I'll put on my skin. So all of those things, your nail polish, your makeup. I mean, the average American female comes in contact with over 200 toxins just before she's left the bathroom each morning, right?
Wow.
So if you all of the stuff that we put on our bodies, we have full control of that. So I would say remove the toxins out of your food, out of your beauty supplies, out of your cleaning supplies. And that's a huge thing that you can do. The second thing is take out all chemicals and processed foods out. So take out the sugar, take out the chemicals, the preservatives, the additives, anything that's made basically in a factory is probably not that good for you, right? There's better for you junk food for sure. I walk around the natural food show every year and I always say, and there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who go. And I'm like, you guys, this is still processed food. It's just better for you, right? It's still not from a farm. So eat less factory food and eat more farm food. Eat more food that doesn't have a nutritional panel, right? No packaging, no labels. It's just food. It's just real whole foods. Those are the two things I would say. And, sugar being a huge cause of inflammation and weight gain and brain fog. And this cascade sugar is because it destroys so much. And insulin resistance is really the first sign before prediabetes and diabetes. And the doctors don't test for insulin resistance, but I do. And so it's really important to know, where your future is. We're looking at prevention. Yeah, take the sugar, the chemicals out and move your body.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you, Risa, for that. That's awesome. I had no idea the level, the number of toxic chemicals that we're exposed to as women, right? Because of all the products that we use. I mean, I'm thinking about my nail color. I'm thinking about the makeup I wear and the lotions that I apply. And wow, that's huge. And really, we don't stop and think about those things or the things that are in our home that are, releasing those toxic chemicals all the time. And so great advice. Thank you. I want you to share a little bit more about your course, if you would, please, and what the listeners would be able to discover if they were to look into what it is that you're doing in there and offering to them.
Yeah, so I put every single thing I know about thyroid, which is a lot because I've been working with thyroid for a long time and I myself included, but it's achieving optimal thyroid health. And basically, I cover hypothyroid, hyperthyroid, thyroidectomy. I cover Graves' disease and Hashimoto's. And I'm defining them. I'm also going through what to eat, what not to eat, what supplements to take, what supplements to avoid, and blood markers. So blood markers are so important because we go to the doctor and, we get a thyroid lab and usually we have one, maybe two. On the outside, we'll get 3 markers. I test everybody for 9 markers because there's so much that affects the thyroid. And the thyroid is so critically important because it interfaces with pretty much every system in the body. So it's critically important to get the thyroid optimized. And so I really break down what lab markers you should ask for, how to read them, what are optimal ranges, what are lab ranges. And so I really cover every single thing you need to know about thyroid in that course. And I'm so proud of that course because it's got all my years of knowledge and all the mistakes I've made and all the mistakes I've seen my clients make. And then I put that into that course. I show labs before and after. I show different case scenarios. So it's chock full of information that I just wanted to reach the masses because I struggled with it. And if I had that course when I first was diagnosed, I would have been thrilled. I would have saved so much time and money and tears and frustration and aggravation. So I wanted to give that gift to the masses because it was brutal. It was brutal what you go through. And I see it all the time. I had somebody today with just crazy numbers on her labs and she's taking medication and she doesn't feel well. And I'm like, of course you don't feel well. It's right there in plain sight.
Well, I am sorry that you had to go through all that you did, but because of it, you are now able to help so many other people. And so it's sad, but it's also good, right? It's a horrible thing to have gone through, but you can now save so many people so much time and come to these solutions faster to improve their health quicker. And so it's just tremendous. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's the silver lining, right? I'm really grateful that I was able to go through that because I learned a lot. And I'm grateful I came out on the other side and that I'm very fortunate that I'm able to help a lot of people. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Risa, I have truly enjoyed our conversation. You have shared so much great information with us. And as I knew you would, So I thank you for taking time to be here with us and pass on this knowledge. Before we close out, I always love to ask my guests if there are books or podcasts that they have found beneficial or influential that they want to share with the listeners. Would you share some with us now?
Gosh, there's really good functional medicine doctors out there who are doing some really good work. Dr. Mark Hyman, I'm a big fan of his, really gets to the root, and he's got so many books out. Dr. Stephen Gundry, also, he endorsed my book, and he's also a pioneer in functional medicine and really talks about food and really gets to root causes. So I love him as well. I also really like a book called Dirty Genes, and his name is totally escaping me right now, but it'll come to me. But I really like him a lot too. And it talks about your genetics. And I think that's where the future is going, is our genes really are making up where our destination, well, it loads the gun, and our environment and our lifestyle pull the trigger. Those are really good. I think genetics is definitely a part of the future.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. And thank you for sharing those. I'll include that information.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So I will put his information in the show notes for the listeners to find. And I like that you just shared that genetics is kind of really where we need to be, where the future's, where it's going. And the point that you made about it loads the gun, but everything that's happening in our environment and what we're dealing with and what we're putting into us is what pulls the trigger, right? And so that's what's ultimately, it's like the blend of those things is causing these problems that we're having. And so great way to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do genetic testing, so it doesn't necessarily mean that's where you're going, but you'll have the information to know that's where I could go if I don't make some changes. So it's very helpful information.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any podcasts that you would like to share with the listeners?
Well, yours, of course.
Thank you.
Gosh, there's so many great podcasts out there that are in functional medicine and nutrition. There's so many. But yeah, any functional medicine and nutrition podcasts are great.
And does Dr. Hyman have a podcast?
It's called Pharmacy, Pharmacy with an S.
Right.
Doctor's Pharmacy, I think is what it's called. Yeah. And he has
Right.
great guests on, and he talks about really important. A lot of his stuff is a little bit, I think, more for practitioners,
Mhm.
or regular people. But if there's a lot of subjects there that he can talk about, but I think he's great.
Yeah, excellent. I'll put that information in there as well. And I think that sometimes these things may be just slightly above, where we're at, but yet it gives us an opportunity to discover new things that maybe could open our minds to ideas that we didn't know before, that we can research more and learn more about, that can change the direction that we're going with our life. So I think that that's a great recommendation, and for sure I'll include that.
Knowledge is king, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we do with that knowledge, right? I mean, it's just one thing to take it in, but then you've got to act on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Risa, before we go, would you share with the listeners where they might be able to find you and, follow along in the work that you're doing? And if they have any questions or just, want to dig into this a little bit more, how would they be able to do that?
So I can be located. My website is Risa, Risa Groux, Groux, nutrition.com. I have my course there. I have my book there. I have my detox there. I have all my supplements there that are super clean because I'm super picky. I have the food frame quiz that you can take there, all the different diet types and recipes for those diet types. I have by meal and by diet types by food frames. All my social media is Risa Groux Nutrition. I work with people all over the country via Zoom, so I'm still working with people. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. I'll be sure all of that is included in the show notes. Thank you again, Risa. It has just been so fantastic having you on the show. I appreciate your time and this knowledge that you've shared with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we'll talk more soon.
Okay.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.